Why are mayors and councillors across Australia being offered an all-expenses-paid trip to the Gold Coast for an Israel lobby event? Let's find out. I'm Nick Hanna, criminal lawyer, and welcome to The What and the Why. On today's episode, I'm going to take a deep dive into the Australian Mayor Summit Against Anti-Semitism that's being held on the Gold Coast next month.
This September, join the local government summit against anti-Semitism. Gain practical tools, share strategies, and lead your community against hate. Stand up for inclusion. Stand up for social cohesion. Stand up because silence is not an option.
The summit is free to attend, and for those coming from interstate, all travel, accommodation, and food costs will be covered by the hosts. Now, why would the hosts be so generous to do that? Well, to answer that question, we first need to ask who they are and what their mission is. The summit is hosted by Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, or CAM. What is CAM? CAM is a pro-Israel lobby group founded by the Jewish-American oil magnate and Trump mega-donor Adam Barron. Barron keeps an extremely low public profile, and one of the only videos you'll find of him online is of him speaking at CAM's last Mayor's Summit Against Anti-Semitism, which was held in Beverly Hills, California.
For myself, my wife Ellen, Combat Anti-Semitism Movement, welcome to all of you. We're so happy that you're here, and thank you for being here.
CAM is operated by the Combat Hate Foundation, which receives millions of dollars each year from Barron's family foundation, as well as significant donations from the foundations of other multimillionaires. But despite this, CAM claims to be grassroots in its promotional videos.
While many organizations and individuals are combating the scourge, more must be done. So the Combat Anti-Semitism Movement was created. This grassroots movement is bringing together hundreds of organizations and hundreds of thousands of individuals dedicated to making the world better.
Although CAM was founded in the US, it's very much an Israeli operation. Indeed, many of its top personnel are former high-ranking members of the Israeli military and government, while the rest are mostly senior figures in Israel's national institutions as well as Zionist lobby groups. Since CAM was founded in 2019, it's been led by its CEO, Sasha Reutemann, who is also the face of the organization.
Shalom! Good evening, everyone. Wow, this is incredible.
In order to properly understand Reutemann's role at CAM, we first need to look at his past, and the best place to start is his bio on the CAM website. After all, a company bio is where you showcase your relevant experience that makes you qualified for the role. So what is Reutemann's relevant experience? Well, shortly after Reutemann migrated to Israel from Belgium, he joined the Israeli Army's Naval Reconnaissance Battalion, and then the Communications Division of the Independent Technological Unit of the IDF. While in the army, he served in the 2006 war with Lebanon, when Israeli carpet bombing killed more than 1,200 Lebanese citizens, the vast majority of whom were civilians. Crucially, Reutemann was subsequently recruited by the Israeli military spokesperson's unit to establish and command the New Media Unit. What is the New Media Unit? While it was first reported that the New Media Unit would fight the IDF's enemies on Facebook and Twitter, its role quickly expanded and it soon became Israel's most powerful weapon to spread online hasbara, which is Hebrew for explanation, but is more commonly translated as propaganda. One of the unit's first public hasbara campaigns was its response to the Israeli Navy's violent raid of the Gaza flotilla convoy in 2010.
Tensions are running high in the Middle East after Israeli commandos stormed a fleet of ships bound for the Gaza Strip. At least 9 people were killed and dozens more wounded Monday in the pre-dawn raid on international waters.
The attack sparked international condemnation, including from the UN, as the ships were unlawfully stormed on international waters while they attempted to break Israel's illegal siege of Gaza and deliver thousands of tons of desperately needed humanitarian aid. But the New Media Unit attempted to shift the media narrative in the West by claiming that the soldiers had killed the activists in self-defense.
A few hours after the Israeli Navy commandos boarded the ships, Corporal Aram and other New Media soldiers were busy distributing footage and audio recorded by military press.
As commander of the New Media Unit, Reutemann was responsible for developing the unit's communication strategy, branding the IDF on social media, running advocacy activities with international organizations, and overseeing campaign production and content. In fact, Reutemann boasts in his bio how his work for the New Media Unit was so valuable that he was recognized as a central figure in developing the Israeli Army's digital warfare capabilities. Reutemann has put these skills to good use with CAM, and in February this year he received the Hero of Israeli Society Award from Israel's Zionist Council for his public diplomacy efforts. Another senior player in the CAM team who was a former high-ranking official in the Israeli Army is retired Brigadier General Seema Vaknin-Gil. Vaknin-Gil, who is a member of CAM's advisory board, spent most of her career in Israeli military intelligence. She was an intelligence officer in the Israeli Air Force and then served as the chief censor of Israel from 2005 to 2015. The chief censor is the head of Israel's military censor, which is the IDF intelligence unit responsible for preventing the publication of any information that might affect the security of Israel. As chief censor, Vakner Gil had the final say about what journalists could or couldn't say when reporting in Israel. In 2014, while Vakner Gil was still the chief censor, Israel launched a bloody military campaign in Gaza which it called Operation Protective Edge.
Israeli bombing in Gaza has intensified, with the Palestinian death toll now reaching more than 500, mostly civilians.
During the offensive, Vakner Gil's media suppression peaked, and she is reported to have censored an average of 10 news articles per day. I should add that during Israel's current genocide in Gaza, the role of the military censor has expanded significantly, and it's reported to have completely banned more than 1,500 articles and partially redacted more than another 6,200 articles last year alone. After leaving the military, Vakner Gil became the Director General of the Ministry of Strategic Affairs and Public Diplomacy, which had just been assigned a new mission.
המשרד לעניינים אסטרטגיים הוקם לפני יותר מ10 שנים לצרכים קואליציוניים, אבל כעת הוא ישמש למאבק בחרם על ישראל.
As Vakner Gil freely admits on her LinkedIn profile, as head of the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, she had the honor of forming a task force to direct the struggle against the false and vicious campaign known as BDS. What is BDS? BDS is a non-violent movement promoting boycotts, divestment and sanctions to pressure Israel to comply with its obligations under international law, specifically ending its military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza, respecting the rights of the Palestinians with Israeli citizenship to equality, and allowing the Palestinian refugees to return to the villages, towns and cities from which they were expelled by Zionist militias in 1948 during what Palestinians refer to as the Nakba. If you want to know more about the Nakba and the right of return, you can check my documentary called The Last Guy, which is also on YouTube. As head of the Ministry of Strategic Affairs, Vakner Gil utilized her military experience in her campaign against BDS.
In the Air Force, coming from the Air Force, when you want to win, you have to have aerial superiority. If you want to win a campaign, you must have information superiority. And this is exactly the added value Israel capabilities, technological and otherwise, we can bring to the game, and we are working on that, working very hard. The second leg is deterrence. Everybody out there who has to do anything with BDS should ask himself twice, do I want to be on this side or do I want to be on the other side? If I'm working with BDS, what is, when I come to the balance of interest, what kind of interest will be affected if I'm dealing with BDS?
Vakner Gil also used her experience as chief military censor to try to keep the details of her anti-BDS activities under wraps.
פעילות המשרד שבראשו עומד היום השר גלעד ארדן מוגדרת חשאית. המנכ"לית, בעברה הצנזורית הצבאית הראשית, צנזרה היום כמעט כל פרט שהיה מאפשר לכנסת לפקח על המשרד העלום, שתוצאות פעילותו טרם ברורות.
אם אתה רוצה לנצח בניהול מערכה, אתה צריך לעשות את זה עם הרבה מאוד עמימות.
That was Vakner Gil speaking at a Knesset Special Committee about the Ministry of Strategic Affairs efforts to combat BDS. At the same committee, she said that the ministry's budget to counter the BDS movement, which it often referred to as delegitimization of Israel, was $11 million out of a total government budget of $33 million for anti-BDS activities. And this figure has increased every year since then. Now, the Israeli government doesn't disclose how its anti-BDS funds are spent, but a significant part of them have gone to lobbying foreign governments to enact laws outlawing BDS. In 2016, Israel's ambassador to the UN said that Israel was advancing legislation in many countries that would make it illegal to boycott Israel. We don't know how much, if any, of the Israeli government's anti-BDS lobbying budget has been allocated to Australia. But we do know that pro-Israel lobby groups in this country, like AJAC and the ECAJ, have campaigned heavily against the movement. One of the main ways they've sought to do this is by arguing that BDS is anti-Semitic. This is despite the fact that countless supporters of BDS in Australia are proudly Jewish, and that BDS Australia's website explicitly states that it doesn't target Jewish people or businesses, and that it doesn't call for the elimination of the State of Israel. Israel's campaign to crush the BDS movement has had greater success in other Western countries, especially in the US, where a majority of states have passed anti-BDS laws. The campaign has received its strongest support yet under the presidency of Donald Trump, who Israeli Prime Minister and International Criminal Court fugitive Benjamin Netanyahu has described as the greatest friend Israel has ever had. Earlier this month, it was revealed that the US Department of Homeland Security would deny disaster relief funding to US cities and states unless they pledged not to boycott Israeli companies. The move was criticized heavily by Trump's own MAGA base, as well as others. This is Jewish-American journalist and free speech advocate Glenn Greenwald.
You can oppose and object to and criticize and campaign against the state of Israel and its government without being racist. You could do that you can criticize the government of Nigeria without being guilty of anti-black racism. You can criticize the government of Saudi Arabia without being guilty of Islamophobia. Everybody understands this except when it comes to Israel. And this is how the Trump administration is justifying punishing American citizens. Even denying them disaster preparedness funds to keep them safe and secure. The first duty of any government. To keep its citizens safe. The government is saying, no, that's not our first priority. Our first priority is to protect Israel. That's your America First government.
The next person I want to talk about is CAM Advisory Board member Reverend Johnny Moore. Johnny Moore is an American evangelical leader and businessman, close Trump ally, and one of the most prominent Christian advocates for Israel in the US.
We are committed to building a great wall of Christian Zionism all over the world to push back the forces of anti-Semitism. Israel has impacted me far more than almost anything else. I almost can't think of my life inseparable from Israel in some ways.
Moore is a director of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, or the IFCJ, which is a fundraising organization founded by Israeli-American Rabbi Yechiel Eckstein that seeks to persuade Christians that they have a religious duty to donate money to Israel. This is Yechiel Eckstein's daughter Yael, who is now president and CEO of the IFCJ.
The fellowship isn't just an organization. It isn't even just a ministry. The fellowship is a community with a calling to fulfill God's word through tangible action and hearts turned up to God. Lord, where will you lead us next? To making sure that the people of Israel have food, have clothing, that the orphans have hope, that the people under threat of terror have shelter, and that the Jewish people from the biblical land of the north and on all four corners of the world, that they have the prophetic opportunity to come home.
Now, Yael didn't mention in that promo video that the IFCJ also collects donations for Israeli soldiers and their families, as can be seen in the Who We Help section of their website. Yael also didn't mention in that promo video that Israel has a long history of oppression against Palestinian Christians, who make up the oldest Christian community in the world. This oppression dates back to 1948, when thousands of indigenous Christian Palestinians were forcibly expelled from Palestine by Zionist militias during the creation of the State of Israel.
I was around 9 years. I remember the day when we received the orders from the army to leave. This order was issued 10 days after the army arrived to the village.
The Palestinian Christians who were able to stay in what came to be known as Israel have been forced to live under what Amnesty International has found to be conditions of apartheid ever since, with the discrimination being most pronounced in the West Bank.
Like all Palestinians, we live under Israeli reality, Israeli oppression. Here in the West Bank, in Bethlehem, we live under the Israeli military occupation, where we suffer from restrictions of movements, very limited opportunities economically. Overall, the quality of life here is very difficult.
During Israel's current genocide in Gaza, countless Palestinian Christians have been killed and several Christian holy sites have been damaged or destroyed by Israeli bombardment, including the Church of St. Porphyrius, which Israel bombed in October 2023, killing 18 people, the Byzantine Church in Jabalia, which was built during the 5th century, and, most recently, Gaza's only Catholic church, the Holy Family Church.
Tonight, a look at the damage to Gaza's only Catholic church after it was struck by Israeli artillery. The building's still standing, but church officials say 3 people were killed. 2 of them buried today, their funerals at the neighboring Greek Orthodox Church. As they were leaving after finishing their prayer, they were targeted, said this man who was sheltering in the church.
Like all evangelical Christian Zionist leaders, Johnny Moore doesn't condemn Israel's violence against Palestinian Christians, and so I think it's fair to say that he doesn't see Palestinian lives as being equal to the lives of Israelis. And this is perhaps why so many people were concerned when he was appointed chairman of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or the GHF. What is the GHF? The The GHF is the shadowy US and Israel-backed private corporation created to circumvent aid relief previously provided by the United Nations in Gaza. While the company claims to be committed to delivering critical emergency food aid to the people of Gaza safely and directly, more than 170 charities and NGOs have condemned its operations and called for it to be shut down.
Forced to run for sustenance and survival, both at once, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation distribution sites have been described as death traps, a theater of cruelty, a murderous system. Now Doctors Without Borders is providing frontline testimony from medics, providing injury analysis and pointing to a deliberate targeting of Palestinians trying to collect food.
Another fierce critic of the GHF is retired US Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilar, who worked at the company's distribution sites in Gaza and is now blowing the whistle about the crimes he saw carried out by both the Israeli army and the GF contractors.
The sites have not only become death traps, they were designed as death traps. All 4 distribution locations were intentionally, deliberately constructed, planned, and built in the middle of an active combat zone. We are using indiscriminate force, targeting civilians, escalation of force that goes far beyond the measures of appropriate against an unarmed, starving population.
Despite this, Johnny Moore continues to claim that his intentions with the GHF are purely to help the people of Gaza.
My mission and the mission of GHF is really, really simple. It's just to feed people, and it should not be as controversial as it has been.
Moore also continues to reject calls for the GHF to be shut down. Here is him speaking at CAM's recent State Leadership Summit on Anti-Semitism and Support for Israel in Kansas City.
We persevere. And you know why we persevere? Because we're Americans, and that's what we do. And why I persevere? Because I'm a Christian, and I can't think of anything more Christian than helping do this, helping feed people, and also, you know, there's this powerful verse I keep reminding myself that's in our New Testament where it says, if you care about the opinions of people, you cannot serve God. We just have to do right, and what we're doing is right.
Next, I'm going to talk quickly about Australia's own Stanley Roth, who is another member of CAM's advisory board and who also sits on the committee for the Mayor's Summit. Stanley Roth is a property mogul and one of Australia's largest donors to Israel. On his bio on CAM's website, Roth describes himself as a passionate supporter of Israel and Karen Hayesod, and he proudly discloses that he was chairman of the New South Wales fundraising campaign for Karen Hayesod in the late 1990s, then the Australian campaign in the early 2000s, and that he continues to support Karen Hayesod. What is Karen Hayesod? Karen Hayesod is the Hebrew name for the United Israel Appeal, or UIA, which is considered by many to be Israel's most valuable fundraising organization. This is former Israeli President Reuven Rivlin.
Without Karen Hayesod, there would have been no state of Israel, plain and simple.
On its Australian website, UIA states that its mission is to raise funds for Israel's national priorities, which are identified at a strategic level collectively by UIA, the Jewish Agency for Israel, and the government of Israel of the day. So that's the current Netanyahu government that's presently carrying out a genocide in Gaza. UIA allocates a significant portion of its funds to assist Jews to leave their countries, including Australia, and migrate to Israel.
Over the past 2 years, almost 60,000 Jews have made Israel their home. 60,000 more people will drive the one and only Jewish state to even greater heights. An additional 60,000 personal contributions will enrich every facet of life in Israel, but they need our help to strengthen their efforts to help the Jewish state thrive. And in the words of Isaiah the prophet, to ensure that Israel continues to be a light unto the nations of the world.
Another one of UIA's long-standing fundraising campaigns is for IDF soldiers who are recent migrants, known as Olim in Hebrew.
Each year, about 700 Olim soldiers who are in Israel alone without their families volunteer to serve in the army.
We're in charge of area of the border in Gaza, and if any emergencies happen, we go in.
This Lone Immigrant Soldiers campaign even has a dedicated page on UIA Australia's website. The CEO of UIA Australia is Yair Miller, who is also a director of the Israel affinity organisation, the ECAJ Harm Prevention Fund. Another director of the ECAJ Harm Prevention Fund is Australia's Special Envoy to Combat Anti-Semitism, Gillian Siegel, who is a keynote speaker at the Mayor's Summit next month. If you don't know who Gillian Siegel is, I suggest you watch episodes 2 and 3 of this podcast, which I'll link to in the description below. Siegel's husband John Roth is the brother of Stanley Roth, and the two brothers jointly own the property empire Henroth, which they inherited from their father. Back in 2002, Henroth was estimated to be worth $140 million, and I assume it'd be worth a whole lot more than that now. Henroth was recently in the news after it was revealed that a related entity, the Henroth Family Trust, had donated $50,000 to the far-right Zionist and anti-Muslim lobby group Advance last year. In the lead-up to this year's federal election, Advance campaigned heavily against the ALP and Prime Minister Albanese, notwithstanding the fact that he had appointed Siegel as special envoy.
Authorised by Sandra Burke, Advance Australia, Canberra.
Following some public backlash, Siegel sought to distance herself from the donation, telling SBS News, "No one would tolerate or accept my husband dictating my politics, and I certainly won't dictate his. I have had no involvement in his donation, nor will I." Australia's Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke was quick to rush to Siegel's defence.
It's a long time since we've been a country where you would blame a woman for decisions of her husband. And so with that in mind, I don't think she's answerable for her husband. She said she didn't know about it, and I've got no reason to do anything other than believe her.
But Burke's defence was misconceived. Siegel never said she didn't know about the donation. She simply said she wasn't involved in it. If she knew about it, then arguably she should have disclosed it as a potential conflict of interest as special envoy. It's not about blaming a woman for the actions of her husband, it's about transparency. Last week, investigative journalist Anthony Clan reported that Siegel has been directly involved in at least some of the donations given by her husband to various groups, which Clan argues cast doubt on her claim that she had no involvement in the Advance donation. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that Siegel was involved in the donation to Advance, or even that she knew about it. That's something we'll only find out if and when an investigation takes place. And while I would support any such investigation, I really don't think it's the main issue here. Sure, Henroth made a one-off donation of $50,000 to Advance, a relatively small and insignificant advocacy group, but this pales in comparison to the significant financial support that Henroth has provided over the years to UIA, Israel's most important fundraising organisation which openly provides financial assistance to IDF soldiers. Indeed, Henroth's support for UIA is so significant that its related entity, Henroth Group, is listed as a gold supporter on UIA Australia's website. And unlike with the Advance donation, Siegel can't say she didn't know about Henroth's support for UIA. Indeed, Siegel herself has a long-standing relationship with UIA and its fundraising activities. This is her addressing a UIA event back in November 2020.
The Australian Jewish community has always been remarkably generous towards the State of Israel. I believe a strong Israel is essential for a strong local community. Therefore, please give generously to the UIA Special Giving Day on the 5th of November to support vulnerable elderly in Israel, and your donation will be generously matched by donors locally.
And this is her pictured with John Roth at the UIA Major Donor Dinner in April 2021. Then Prime Minister Scott Morrison was the keynote speaker at the event, and he gave Siegel a special mention, saying, "Gillian Siegel, lovely to see you, Gillian. Thank you for your leadership." Even after being appointed Special Envoy, Gillian Siegel attended a UIA event in Sydney, as you can see from this photo of her with Nova Peris, who I'll come to shortly. In my view, Siegel's own involvement with UIA, as well as her husband's significant financial support for the organisation, give rise to a far more serious potential conflict of interest than her possible knowledge of the Advance donation. Yet there's been zero reporting about this issue. I think some really important questions need to be asked about Gillian Siegel and Stanley Roth's involvement with UIA. Like, has Stanley donated to UIA since the start of the genocide in Gaza? If so, have any of these funds gone to support soldiers who have taken part in the genocide? Is Siegel aware of this, and has she supported UIA regardless? There is a real public interest in these issues being properly investigated, but as always, I can't see it happening given the current state of politics and journalism in this country. Now, there's not enough time to go into the same level of detail about the rest of the CAM team, but I just want to highlight some of the more notable members. Barney Breen Portnoy is CAM's editor-in-chief. While it's not mentioned on his bio on CAM's website, Portnoy's LinkedIn profile discloses that he served in the IDF Spokesperson's Unit's Interactive Media Department as managing editor of the IDF English website. Revital Yakin-Krakowski is one of CAM's senior advisors. According to a LinkedIn profile, Krakowski is currently the Executive Director for Strategy and Communications for the Israeli Ministry of Strategic Affairs, a position which he has held since 2017. This is the same ministry that CAM advisor Vaknin Gill was the Director General of and which led Israel's campaign against BDS. Hadis Bar-Erez is CAM's Director of Strategic Planning and Project Management. She served in the IDF for 7 years, including as a captain, and she is still an active reservist logistics officer in an artillery brigade. E.J. Kimball is CAM's Director of Christian Outreach and Engagement. He was previously the Director of US Operations for the Israel Allies Foundation, or the IAF, which is an Israeli lobby group headquartered in Jerusalem. The IAF is credited with having anti-BDS legislation passed in South Carolina, and it has gone on to lobby 25 other US states to introduce anti-BDS laws. This is Kimball being asked by evangelical Christian Zionist Alex McFarland about why Americans should vote for politicians based on their support for a foreign power, Israel.
Why is it in the best interest of the American people to have and to support leaders, elected officials, that believe in Israel and the right of the nation of Israel to exist and to self-determination?
Well, it's about right and wrong. It's about morality. It's about truth. The state of Israel is a force for good in the world.
Shai Solomon is CAM's Director of Hispanic Affairs, which is an important role given CAM's prolific outreach in Latin America. Solomon served in the IDF with honors before becoming the emissary of the Jewish Agency, which is the organization responsible for encouraging immigration of Jews from their countries of birth to Israel. Solomon was also the emissary of the Jewish National Fund, which is an Israeli fundraising body which has funded infrastructure projects on Israeli military sites as well as illegal settlements in the West Bank. Shira Granot is CAM's Director of Community Engagement. She served in the IDF's International Relations Division before working for the Defense Ministry's delegation at the Israeli Embassy in Berlin. Gwyn Trindler is CAM's Executive Affairs Coordinator. She was previously a legislative aide in the Virginia House of Delegates, where she boasts that she played a key role in advancing Virginia's adoption of the IRA definition of anti-Semitism, a definition I'll return to shortly. Natan Sharansky is Chair of CAM's Advisory Board. He has held various senior roles in the Israeli government, including Minister of Internal Affairs and Deputy Prime Minister. After leaving politics, he was the chairman of the executive for the Jewish Agency. Robert Singer sits on CAM's advisory board. He was previously the CEO of the World Jewish Congress, one of the peak international Zionist representative bodies. In that role, Singer gave the keynote address at the annual summit against BDS, organized by the World Jewish Congress and Israel's permanent mission to the United Nations.
The boycott, divestment and sanctions movement says it wants peace. It claims to fight under the banner of human rights. But this movement is biased on lies and based on lies, incitement and deception. BDS is not about peace. BDS is not about helping the Palestinians. BDS is not about human rights. What BDS really wants is to deny the Jewish people's right to a homeland in Israel.
Ellen Carr is another member of CAM's advisory board. He's the CEO of the lobby group Israel American Council, which was founded in 2007 by Israel's Consul General and a group of Israeli business leaders. Under Trump's first administration, Carr was the US Special Envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, which is the equivalent of Gillian Siegel's current role in Australia. As Special Envoy, Carr pushed for policies that expanded the definition of anti-Semitism to include criticism of Israel.
And let me tell you something. It will be my mission to tear down this fake distinction between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. There is no distinction. There is no distinction.
There are also 4 Australians who sit on CAM's advisory board. They are David Gonski, who is Chancellor of the University of New South Wales and has also previously been involved with the Australia-Israel Chamber of Commerce, of which Gillian Siegel was the chairperson until recently. Dr. Ron Weiser, who has held various leadership roles in pro-Israel lobby groups in Australia, including being the past president of the Zionist Federation of Australia, Stanley Roth, who I've discussed already, and Orna Triggerboff. Orna Triggerboff is best known for being the daughter of Harry Triggerboff, aka High Rise Harry, the billionaire owner of the Meriton property development empire.
Harry Triggerboff, they say you're now the richest man in Australia. Do you believe that?
Yeah, I do.
Harry is the top sponsor of the Mayor's Summit, and Orna is a member of the Summit Committee. This shouldn't come as any surprise given the family's long history of staunch support for Israel. This clip is from a video published by the Jewish National Fund back in 2012.
On the 3rd of September, Keren Kayemet LeIsrael Jewish National Fund held a festive ceremony to dedicate the Triggerboff family gardens at the Yitzhak Rabin Center in Tel Aviv. The ceremony took place in the presence of the donor, Harry Triguboff, and his daughters, Sharon and Orna, who are continuing in his path of activism for the benefit of people and their environment in Israel. Among the distinguished guests participating in the ceremony were friends and admirers of Harry Triguboff, including Ephraim Halevi, the former head of the Mossad.
Harry's commitment to Israel was only strengthened over the years. This is him being interviewed 2 months into the current genocide in Gaza.
What would you say to the Jewish people of Australia? To stay strong?
The Jewish people of Australia have to be strong. We have to believe in Israel.
He's also not someone to hold back from telling us what he really thinks about Palestinians.
People in Gaza, they don't value human life. So if they lose people, well, tough luck, they don't care. Very difficult to find someone who doesn't care enough about his own people. And that's why the war is all the time going on and on. If it was a normal fight where they valued them, then it would have been over a long time ago.
Okay, so now that I've discussed who CAM is, I want to talk briefly about what CAM actually does. Although CAM's name suggests that its mission is to fight anti-Semitism, its activities largely focus on fighting criticism of Israel. Now, there's not enough time to talk about all of the ways that it does this, so I just want to look at some of the main ones. At the heart of CAM's strategy is its campaign for governments and organizations across the world to adopt the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or IHRA, definition of anti-Semitism. If you don't know what the IHRA definition is and why it's so important, I recommend that you watch episode 2 of this podcast, which I'll link to in the description. But basically, the IHRA definition treats most criticism of Israel as being anti-Jewish, and it's one of the main weapons that's being used by the Zionist lobby to stifle opposition to Israeli apartheid and now genocide against the Palestinians. It's the IHRA definition that's at the heart of Siegel's highly controversial plan to combat anti-Semitism in Australia. Shortly after the formation of CAM in 2019, Sasha Reutman gave an interview with the pro-Israel media outlet to promote the new organization. When asked what CAM's goals were for the next 5 years, he said, "We would like CAM to be the largest global coalition of organizations to combat anti-Semitism. We would like to also see as many organizations as possible adopting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism." In an interview in 2020, Reutman explained the importance of this strategy of conflating opposition to Israel and racism against Jews.
Today it's easy to be anti-Zionism and complicated to be anti-Semitic. So we try to bring them together, and this is why we're promoting the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism that explicitly compare anti-Zionism to anti-Semitism and try to end this utilization of the word anti-Zionism as something that is acceptable in our society.
As part of this strategy of conflation, Reutman has called repeatedly for the banning of political slogans in support of Palestinian liberation.
So that will be a big fight for us in the next months to make sure that the Jewish and Zionist identity are recognized as one and not be challenged. And hopefully to make sure that slogan like "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," which are call for genocide, intifada, call for genocide, will not be accepted.
This is despite the fact that countless Jewish allies routinely chant these same slogans at pro-Palestine protests. And while I can't speak for their intentions, I'm pretty confident they're not calling for the genocide of Jews, but rather for an end to Israeli apartheid, which confers full rights to Jewish people, but not to Palestinians. CAM's objective of becoming the largest global coalition of organizations to combat anti-Semitism isn't going too badly so far. On its website, CAM boasts that it's partnered with over 850 interfaith organizations, influential decision makers, and a network of more than 5 million activists. But who are these partners? Well, there's a long list of them that you can see on CAM's website, nearly all of which appear to be hardline Zionist organizations. In fact, one of the partners listed is the Israeli Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. In 2023, the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs became the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs and Combating Anti-Semitism, and it was assigned the role of leading Israel's fight against the BDS movement. The head of the ministry, Amichai Chikli, is one of the Israeli government's most vocal proponents of permanently annexing the little that remains of Palestine, as well as territories of neighboring Arab countries.
Sea area, Judea Desert, the Jordan Valley, all the Gush Etzion, Susia, all this, it should be under full Israel sovereignty for good.
Last September, Chikli claimed that Lebanon could not be defined as a state, and called for the IDF to establish a buffer zone inside southern Lebanon. A couple of months earlier, it was revealed by Haaretz and the New York Times that the Diaspora Affairs Ministry had orchestrated a campaign of using hundreds of fake social media accounts to post pro-Israel or anti-Muslim content in order to sway public opinion about Israel's war on Gaza and pressure US lawmakers. Speaking of social media, one of Cam's other activities is building a digital army to fight for Israel and the Jewish people. In the recruitment pitch on its website, Cam says social media is a critical battlefield in the war against Israel and the global Jewish community. Help us spread critical messages and reach online influencers who can maximize our impact. Now, the army metaphor couldn't be more apt, given the senior military backgrounds of several of Cam's top personnel. And it's for this same reason that it's not surprising to see some subtle but still discernible references to the Israeli military in Cam's promotional material.
Working together, people have accomplished great things. Now it's our turn to come together and help turn hate into hope, anger into understanding, and anti-Semitism into an anathema forevermore.
Although it's kind of funny to watch Cam use clips of African-American civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., as well as a rally in support of Nelson Mandela's African National Congress against apartheid in a promo video about an organization dedicated to silencing criticism of Israeli apartheid, that's not why I shared the video. At the end of the clip, you can see a group of young females marching with Israeli flags in their hands. Now, you see that green top they're all wearing with the yellow logo on it? Well, that's the official sweatshirt of the IDF. So it's Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and the IDF. You can't make this stuff up. Another one of Cam's activities is its so-called research about anti-Semitism. Cam delivers this research in reports that it publishes on its website and shares with governments and other organizations. Unsurprisingly, the reports don't distinguish between genuine anti-Semitism, being discrimination against Jewish people on the basis of their being Jewish, and anti-Zionism, being opposition to Israel. And it's pretty clear from the reports that their focus is on the latter. For example, in Cam's latest report, it has a section dealing with what it calls left-wing anti-Semitism, in which it claims that explicit indicators of far-left anti-Semitism include demonstrations featuring communist flags and calls for the destruction of Israel under the guise of Palestinian liberation. It's just saying Free Palestine is anti-Semitic, according to Cam. The report goes on to allege that implicit indicators of anti-Semitism are the use of terms such as settler colonialism and Israeli apartheid. But just about every major human rights organization in the world has long considered Israel to practice apartheid in Palestine. Indeed, even Israel's leading human rights organization, B'Tselem, has reported extensively on Israel's apartheid practices. So according to Cam, they must be anti-Semitic as well. Cam not only tries to silence people who speak out against Israeli violence, but it also champions people who advocate for Israeli violence. One such person is Jewish-American Republican politician Randy Fine, who made headlines in May this year after he gave this interview with Fox News.
The fact of the matter is the Palestinian cause is an evil one.
Yeah, and Congressman, there is a ceasefire deal on the table right now that the White House is hoping both Israel and Hamas will sign on to. Does this shooting change anything when it comes to the course of the war or the negotiations to end it?
Well, I think it speaks to the importance of the only end of the conflict is complete and total surrender by those who support Muslim terror. In World War II, we did not negotiate a surrender with the Nazis. We did not negotiate a surrender with the Japanese. We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender. That needs to be the same here. There is something deeply, deeply wrong with this culture, and it needs to be defeated.
Fine later clarified that he didn't actually think dropping a nuclear bomb on Gaza would be a good idea, but not for the reason you might think.
Do you really mean to say that the U.S. should use nuclear weapons against a people because there's something wrong with their culture?
Of course not. What I was saying is that we didn't negotiate with evil in World War II. We defeated the Germans. We defeated the Japanese using any means that were necessary. And the same needs to be done in Gaza. Nuking Gaza would be a terrible idea. The fallout would drift into Israel. It would kill the hostages. The point that I was making was,
but you're not worried about it
killing,
and say, for example, women and children in Gaza who, the innocents?
I think war is a messy thing. And I think that when you defeat evil, you have to do it as necessary to do it.
This isn't the first time that Fine has used genocidal rhetoric about the Palestinians. In February this year, he tweeted, "Gaza must be destroyed," and "killed them all. #NoMercy, bombs away." Just last week, Fine made clear his support for Israel's forced starvation of Gaza in an interview with Christian Zionist pastor Tony Perkins.
Right now we have you must feed the enemy. You must make them comfortable so they can regain their strength and try to kill you again. And so Bibi, it sounds like, has decided he's going to win the war. He's going to conquer the enemy and make them submit. That's how wars work.
Now, I'm not someone who gets shocked easily, but some of the things that Fine said in that interview even had me lost for words.
It's like these pictures of starving children next to fat mothers and other children that are perfectly fine, and people refusing to deal with the hard facts of the conditions on the ground, which, as we can talk about, there's a reason there are a lot of kids in bad shape in Gaza. And it turns out, if you marry your cousin, which almost half of Gazans have done, you're going to have a pretty good chance of your kid having a problem.
Yeah, good point.
Cam has a close relationship with Fine, and even sent him on a delegation to Israel last year. On the 30th of July this year, after Fine's call to nuke Gaza, Cam presented him with a baseball bat which it called the Hebrew Hammer, which is Fine's nickname. Fine did a post thanking Cam for the bat, to which they said, "We were proud to present you with the Hebrew Hammer, and you have proved exactly why it belongs in your hands." Okay, so the last Cam activity I want to talk about today is the anti-Semitism summits they've organised for mayors and councillors in various cities, including Athens, Frankfurt, Fort Lauderdale and Beverly Hills. So why does Cam target local government? Well, the answer is found in evidence that Cam advisor Brigadier General Varken Gill gave in January last year at a Knesset committee about how Israel should best deal with the rise of anti-Semitism, which was really a reference to the rise of anti-Israel sentiment in the wake of its genocidal onslaught in Gaza. Part of Varken and Gill's evidence was reported in The Guardian, but this is a translation of the Knesset transcript itself. Varken and Gill first said that Cam was committed to promoting the IRA definition of anti-Semitism and that, to complement that strategy, Cam had turned its attention to lobbying local government. She said, "We shifted our focus to work at the local level because, in the end, adopting a definition is one thing, but implementing it and taking action, that probably brings us to the local level. And we discovered that mayors and heads of municipalities and counties and states within federal states, it is much easier to work with them and actually turn the definition into something real." Now, we don't know exactly what Varken and Gill meant when she said easier to work with, but I take it to mean that they see local governments as being more susceptible to lobbying pressure than higher levels of government, and that's why Cam is targeting them. So with that in mind, let's look at next month's Mayor's Summit on the Gold Coast. The Australian Mayor's Summit against anti-Semitism is chaired by Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate. Tate is a property developer and ardent supporter of Israel. This is him hosting the Jerusalem Prayer Breakfast on the Gold Coast in 2023.
I feel humbled enough to come and deliver a warm welcome on the Gold Coast and to honour Israel. And with that, I'll start welcoming people from all the way from Israel, from the Knesset, and whether they're current serving member or former serving member, His Excellency Ambassador from Israel.
One of the two Knesset members that Tate was welcoming then was apparently Ohad Tal, who is a member of the extreme right Religious Zionist Party. The Religious Zionist Party is headed by Bezalel Smotrich, who has gained notoriety over the past 2 years for his open calls for genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. Now, there's not enough time to look at all of the people who will be speaking at the summit, but I just want to give a snapshot of a few of the more interesting characters. Nova Peres is a former Olympic champion, turned politician, turned pro-Israel activist. A bit earlier, I showed you this photograph of Peres with Gillian Siegel at a UIA event in Sydney last year. Well, here is Peres promoting a UIA event in Queensland a few months later.
Hi, I'm Nova Peres, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you all at the UIA event in Brisbane on the 22nd of September. It is so important that we come together in these challenging times, and I really hope to see you all at this important event for all supporters of Israel. Please book today as places are selling fast.
Peres uses the fact that she's Indigenous to lend credibility to her support for Israel, which includes her claims that Palestinians do not face apartheid or genocide.
Many Australians don't know what war looks like. They don't understand the weight of survival or the price of freedom. But I do, and so do the people of Israel. I want to say this. There is no apartheid here. What there is a nation defending itself with surgical precision against terrorism on behalf of the world.
The place that Peres was speaking at in that clip is the Technion Israel Institute of Technology in occupied Haifa. Technion plays a pivotal role in the Israeli weapons industrial complex. For example, it collaborates extensively with Israel's largest arms manufacturer, Elbit Systems, which supplies many of the lethal weapons used by the Israeli army against Palestinians in Gaza. Technion is also closely connected to Israel's state weapons company, Rafael Advanced Defense Systems Limited, which produces various types of ballistic and other missiles for the Israeli army. Jeff Scope is a former national leader of the neo-Nazi movement in the US and is supposedly speaking at the summit because of his expertise on far-right anti-Semitism. But what isn't disclosed on CAM's website is that Scope is on the payroll of the Israel affinity organization, the Simon Wiesenthal Center, where he works as a consultant. On the 23rd of October 2023, when Israel's genocide in Gaza was well underway, Scope attended a Solidarity with Israel rally at the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Sharona Nazarian is the mayor of Beverly Hills, which hosted CAM's last mayor's summit against anti-Semitism. Nazarian has a long history of activism for Israel affinity groups, including being the former vice president of Friends of Israeli Disabled Veterans and an executive board member of the Women's International Zionist Organization. In an interview in May this year, Nazarian said, "From the moment I was elected to the city council, I made it a priority to stand with Israel." Darcy Byrne is the mayor of Sydney's Inner West Council and is a close ally of Prime Minister Albanese. Byrne has a long history of taking positions against BDS, including last August when he and his ALP colleagues voted down a motion to review the council's procurement policy so as to exclude companies involved in human rights abuses and weapons manufacturing. The last speaker I want to mention today is Dr. Andre Oberle, who is one of the least well-known speakers at the summit, but one of the most important. Dr. Oberle is a so-called expert in online anti-Semitism, and he spent most of his career advocating for the censorship of social media content that he describes as anti-Semitic, but much of which is actually just criticism of Israel. Oberle has worked for various pro-Israel lobby groups, including the Zionist Federation of Australia, the Pratt Foundation, and the infamous Anti-Defamation League in the US. Between 2009 and 2018, he was employed by the State of Israel itself as chair of the Foreign Ministry's Global Forum for Combating Anti-Semitism. In 2013, while Oberle was serving the Israeli government, he co-published a report about online anti-Semitism which contained dozens of radical recommendations for governments, social media platforms, and other entities. At the core of the proposals was the adoption by decision makers at all levels of what was then known as the EUMC working definition of anti-Semitism, which was the predecessor of, and is almost identical to, the IRA definition. That is, it treats most criticism of Israel as anti-Semitic. Oberle's report contains more than 50 recommendations, but the more terrifying ones include prohibiting anti-Semitic behaviours on social media platforms, penalising social media platform operators who promote hate speech, requiring employers and teachers to ban access to anti-Semitic websites, requiring internet service providers to block anti-Semitic sites, requiring landlords to deny premises to anti-Semitic amenable internet service providers, requiring search engines like Google to exclude anti-Semitic sites from searches, and requiring lawmakers to prohibit the use of the internet to promote hatred. Oberle presented this report at a conference in occupied Jerusalem organised by his then employer, the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
I'd like to start by thanking the Foreign Ministry for calling this conference together, for bringing us into this room, into this forum, where we can discuss these important issues.
During his presentation, Oberle spoke about the need for social media platforms to censor anti-Semitic content, and that if that didn't work, then law enforcement would need to step in.
The last line of defence is legislation and public prosecution. This should not be where the battle starts. This should not be something we need to do. But all too often, this is the only response that will get the only action that will get a response, that will actually cause content to be taken down and will cause platform providers to stand up and take notice.
More than a decade later, Oberle is still campaigning for the censorship of online content that he claims is anti-Semitic, but is often actually legitimate criticism of Israel and its violent and discriminatory policies towards Palestinians. Here he is last year advancing a very creative argument as to why calling Israel racist can in fact be a form of anti-Semitism.
What we're seeing is an argument that Israel is a racist state. This is the Zionism is Nazism, the Zionism is racism argument that came from the UN as a Cold War phenomenon. So Zionism is racism. The next line is Zionism is Nazism. The next line is you are a Zionist.
or you support Israel, therefore you're a Zionist. And the final step is therefore you're a Nazi. And the result of that is people then saying, okay, well, we've defined you as a Nazi, so we can treat you as we would treat a Nazi. You have no rights. We can do what we like to you.
Oboler didn't present any evidence of people having had their rights denied due to their support for Israel, and I doubt any such evidence exists. But what about people having their rights denied for speaking out against Israel as it commits a genocide in Gaza? In 2024, Oboler penned an op-ed for the Jerusalem Post in which he congratulated Meta for updating its censorship policy so that a lot of anti-Zionist content would now be treated in the same way as anti-Jewish content. Oboler claimed Meta's policy change was the result of consultation with relevant global stakeholders, which I think we can safely assume means his former employer Israel and its lobby. None of this should be surprising given the invaluable role that Meta has played in cracking down on online speech opposing Israel's genocide in Gaza. In December 2023, Human Rights Watch released a report alleging systematic censorship of pro-Palestine content on Instagram and Facebook. And in April this year, leaked internal data from Meta disclosed that the social media giant had complied with 94% of censorship requests by the Israeli government since the start of its onslaught in Gaza, in what Dropsite News described as the largest mass censorship operation in modern history. The leaked data showed that Meta had removed over 90,000 Facebook and Instagram posts to comply with takedown requests made by Israel, and that Meta had significantly expanded its own automated takedowns since October 2023, resulting in an estimated 38.8 million additional posts being removed, banned, or suppressed. I'm going to end this video by asking the same question that I began with. Why are the mayors and councillors of Australia being offered an all-expenses-paid trip to the Gold Coast for a summit about anti-Semitism? Well, I hope I've helped you answer that question by breaking down the organisation behind the summit, what its goals and strategies are, and who some of the key speakers will be. In my view, this summit has very little to do with fighting anti-Semitism, and a whole lot to do with fighting criticism of a foreign power, Israel. It's already been reported that numerous councillors are refusing to go to the summit, and it's unclear how many will actually end up going. In my view, the councillors who are attending the summit have some explaining to do to their communities. They should explain why they are going and who is paying for their trip. If the pro-Israel lobby is paying, these councillors should explain what they are going to do to ensure that they are not perceived as having their influence bought. And if it's the council that's footing the bill, these councillors should explain why ratepayers' money is being used for this and what benefit it's bringing to the community. For me, this summit is an important litmus test at this critical juncture for Australia. On the one hand, we are now witnessing the pro-Israel lobby making its most aggressive push to strengthen its grip on all levels of government and public institutions. But on the other hand, we are witnessing what appears to be a groundswell of opposition amongst everyday people in this country to the lobby and to Israel itself. Many of these people are motivated by their disgust at the horrific scenes that have been coming out of Gaza every day for the past 2 years. Disgust at Israel's systematic extermination of a largely defenseless population with the backing of Western governments. But many others are simply incensed by what they see as the incremental surrender of this country's sovereignty and the outsourcing of its policymaking to a foreign power, together with the ever-expanding assault on our freedom of speech. But whatever the motive, the tide does appear to be turning. The question is, can we act in time? Okay, so that's the end of today's episode. If you made it this far, that hopefully means you value my work, so please show your support by liking the video, leaving a comment, and most importantly, clicking the subscribe button. Until next time.